Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Protogo, bringing you some more Cosmonarchy castovers. Cosmonarchy, of course, is a project based on Brood War, but it is very different indeed. Let's see what happens when Neblime takes on Hamster. Zerg versus Protoss, two of our best players in our current active pool. And we'll be going to Impetus as we continue on this series that was played before the recent tournament. But still, something worth pointing out. This is actually an older version of Impetus than what we played during the March Invitational B tournament. I'll leave a link to that in the description if you guys are curious how tournament play looks in Cosmonarchy. But nonetheless, let's talk about the differences. Some of the changes if you're coming from Brood War, or at least a surface level understanding of Brood War's mechanics. You'll notice that the workers are harvesting resources faster than before. They return a value of 4 from mineral fields, unless they're depleted, in which case the mineral fields give you 3. The gas can be harvested directly from the source, giving you 4 from the geyser, 2 from the ridge, and you can upgrade the geyser by building a structure on top of it, like you would have to in Starcraft 1 and 2 normally. When you upgrade it, it increases the yield that you get back, so you get 5 or 6 instead of just 4. We have Hamster, our Protoss player, going for a gateway opener. It's fairly solid, but it's not the only thing you can make from the word go. And it looks like Neblime, our Zerg player, will be going for a Hatcherosk. That's a hatchery by any other name. Going to go ahead and drop that ahead of the ramp. So in Cosmonarchy, it's a little bit different than the pacing that you might see out of StarCraft 1 or StarCraft 2 in terms of the sort of exponential gains that you can get from expanding. And one of the reasons why is because we don't have supply in the game. So the counter in the top right is actually showing you workers over military units. As we get more military units set up, like this gateway is about to finish over in Hamster's base, he'll queue up a unit out of that, and when that unit is finished, you'll see his number go from 0 to 1. Fairly basic stuff. But the worker counts also mean a little bit of a different thing depending on the situation. Zerg still have larvae as a mechanic, and so you can still expect them to be able to scale up their worker production from a deficit compared to the other races later on in the game. But otherwise they will operate at a little bit of a deficit because they use their larvae to make both workers and military units, while also using workers in order to create structures. You'll notice that so far, Neblime has not put down any tech structures. He's just going to be operating with the one Hatcherosk and continuing to make workers, and also has been harvesting Vespene. That's because he's going to be opening up with a Hydrith Den, almost certainly. He's a little bit late on it. Looks like going for a Kagrant instead. We'll see what his choice actually is. Yep, there it is. The Hydrith Den is on the way. So this is what I was talking about, alluding to, saying that the early game affords you more than just the gateway, for example, at Tier 1 from the word go. Well, indeed, the Hydrith Den is also afforded. Looks like the Droleth has seen a Legionnaire being trained. There's another one on the way. And so Neblime is going to scramble his workers to try to hold the ramp, as maybe Hamster is thinking about moving up it. He has put down some static defense here, so our Zerg player shouldn't really be in any jeopardy. In fact, he's not even going to lose a single worker because Hamster spread his damage out between 2 separate targets. So, losing one worker in that situation isn't the end of the world because, assuming Neblime did lose it to, Hamster getting the right focus fire down, it wouldn't really be the end of the world in that situation due to the fact that he has the extra production from the early Hatcherosk, and he's also going to go for Hydrith Den, which scales a little bit better versus gateway-focused armies, although it will require some support later on as the game continues. I like Hamster's response in this situation, going for an expansion and a third gateway. So he's going to continuously produce units off of his gates and start to incorporate ranged units into the mix. No need for a Cybernetics Core or a Twilight Council or anything like that from the other StarCraft games. As soon as you build your gateway, you get access to 5 units you can make. We've only seen 1 so far out of Hamster, but that doesn't mean that the other 4 aren't necessarily coming. In fact, if a lot of melee comes out of Neblime, which is unlikely given he's gone Hydrith Den, he'll actually, you might even end up seeing Ecclesiasts. But right now, we're going to go for an interesting play, the Rogue Gallery. So we actually saw Hamster do a similar sort of strategy to what I think he's going to do here, which is he's going to get the gas from his expansion exclusively and ignore the minerals for a good amount of time, because he's going to be using 2 Rogue Galleries to produce Kabbalists. That's the Dark Templar in other versions of StarCraft. And the Kabbalist has a unique passive where as long as it remains cloaked and it decloaks when it attacks, it will be able to leap towards a target. And that means that it basically teleports onto them as an instantaneous gap close. It still does pretty high DPS, base damage, but a fairly lengthy cooldown, so you want to be microing it and paying a lot of attention to it. And the Legionnaire, the Spearman here, for the Protoss, has a similar passive as to the Kabbalist, except obviously instead of being cloaked, when it attacks a unit, other Legionnaires can leap to that target. So essentially what Hamster is doing is building a melee-oriented composition And he is going to use this melee-oriented composition to essentially gap close instantaneously and surprise his opponent, surround his opponent's ranged units. And what Neblime should be thinking about doing in this situation is looking for some form of crowd control. Izira cores are a great choice in this situation, but he's only got enough resources for one of them. And it looks like the first unit out of the rogue gallery is actually going to be a Barghest. The Ovaleth here for detection, not required for supply anymore, so you make it for transport and detection. That will reveal that the Barghest is here. You can also click on a structure and see what is being made. Neblime's camera position wasn't over here, so we know he didn't do that to see the Kabbalist. But if he came back with that Ovaleth and clicked on this rogue gallery, he would actually see the production queue there, the little view. And it also lets you see things like energy cost and similar things. So like if you scout a specialist unit, a spellcaster of some kind, you can click on them with detection and see their energy count, where in normal StarCraft 1 you can't. I think StarCraft 2 does give you that ability by default. We've decided to make that part of the detection UI. So a third base coming in at the 8 o'clock position here for our Zerg player. And a Zorka's Shroud is on the way. That's going to afford Neblime the necessary tools to achieve some form of crowd control with the Lekizalisk, which was the lurker in the other StarCraft games. The Spraith will indeed finish. That's going to allow the Barghest to be warded off. Of course, it was being detected, so there is that as well. You know, again, just like the Kabbalist, when you do attack as a Protoss cloaked unit, the unit is then revealed. It's combat cloaking for them. Terran actually has proximity cloak, but obviously no Terran in this particular matchup. Let's see how this composition fares, because Neblime actually said that he thought that this composition was very scary and very lethal. We'll have to see if it is indeed true. The Barghest is going to get sniped down immediately, so its passive is not even worth talking about in this engagement. But despite having a lot of Hydras, he's arrived at the time where there is no Lekizalisk up. So the Kabbalists and Legionnaires are jumping straight on top of those ranged units and completely negating their ability to actually kite around the map or move anywhere. And that Lekizalisk desperately trying to make it up the ramp. Looks like Neblime's kind of lost it. Now he realizes where it is, but it's only going to get one attack off. The other one, maybe not equally, not long for this world, going to get focused down by the Legionnaires. Eventually it will die. I see Neblime trying to step on top of it with his other combat units. That's going to be GG, and Hamster pulls off the 7-minute timing attack where he ends up with a huge amount of teleporting armies. Hey, I'd love to see a little bit of a novel strategy here. Even if this was your introductory game and you've not seen that much of Cosmonarchy before, you got to understand that is actually not a strategy you would normally say, oh yeah, Hamster's definitely going to be able to do this. So a bit of a novelty. And what is the response from the Zerg there? Well, Neblime actually had the right idea going for the Lekizalisk. If you get 3-4 of those at the choke and maybe have a Circuith, which is the static defense anti-surface structure, the Sunken Colony in StarCraft 1 or Spine Crawler equivalent in StarCraft 2, the way that you would think about that is at least I have some kind of surface area reduction so that even though they're teleporting on top of me, they can't fully surround me. That would be one way to do it. And also, of course, if he gets the burrow down and you're zoning him away with other units, you actually can't see the Lekizalisk without detection. If they can stand on top of a burrowed unit, the burrowed unit is revealed, and that mechanic was what allowed those Lekizalisks to be destroyed by the units, by Hamster's Protoss, without needing detection. And so if you can deny them being able to step on top of your burrowed units, they actually can't engage, and they're going to take a lot of splash damage. So Neblime had the right idea, but Hamster was able to get the dub. And hey, we've got more games in this set to cast, so let's get right on and cast them. So we are into our second match in this set of matches that we're going to be casting in this video. It's actually the fourth match of the set, as you can see, because Hamster is up to a 2-1 lead. We've got Neblime in the mid-right of Infinite Velocity, Hamster in the mid-left. Now, this map has been a staple for a long while, and it does kind of encourage you to play fairly aggressively in the early stages of the game, and the reason for that is these burning Terran tech structures, the Atlas, which unlocks Tier 2 for the Terrans, at 4 minutes in, they're going to finish burning down, and you can obviously speed that up by attacking them. Meanwhile, we have this Nidus that connects the bases that are otherwise very far away from each other, as you can see. That's why Hamster's put his gateway over here facing those Atlases. So this map does change the sort of decision tree that you make, but you can still choose to scout relatively early and take the long ground path that kind of goes through the center of the map here. But there's going to be another Hatrosk at the ramp for Neblime. He's content with that particular strategy. Hamster was thinking about a second gate, but decides to keep on doing the worker thing. On this map, there's actually a faster geyser and a slower geyser. So something that you can do on this map is go for grabbing Vespene from this lower geyser here. And that will be faster than doing it from this upper one. So just a little bit of an optimization that Hamster doesn't seem aware of, but something worth pointing out. It's been like that for a while, actually. Second gate will be indeed about halfway done now. And we have a Zealot coming out. If you're looking for raw DPS to bust down the Atlas, it's actually best to get a Drakodon, a unit that we didn't see in the last game, but we will probably end up seeing in this one. And it is actually going to be a pool first here, so showing the differences of what you can do is Neblime. Obviously, he went Den first in the last game so that he could make Hydralisks. Now, another reason why you might want to take a Zealot instead... Oh, and by the way, the reason why it does less damage is actually because it only has 1 armor pen, the Atlas has 4 armor, and the Zealot attacks twice. So it's 2 times 8, but it's actually 2 times 5, since 3 armor is effective after the interaction there. Little quick math for you. So the first Atlas is going to go ahead and burn down. And the advantage of going Zealots is that if your opponent is going to go Pool, which probably they will, they might have Quasilisks, as what Neblime is working on. They might have Zethrakors, which is the Zergling equivalent. And it also, I guess, in the case of Hamster, it allows him to just batten down the hatches, destroy the Nidus. Although I'm a little confused as to why his gateway positioning was over here, since that would be optimal for rallying through the Nidus. But unfortunately, didn't end up happening. So we do have 8 Quasilisks. They are 2 per egg, so that was 4 expenditures. We've got 3 more finishing up in the eggs now, and so it's going to actually be a pretty nice total of 16 Quasis all told. And it looks like Neblime wants to destroy the first Atlas, but then guard himself over here, just in case, massing up his forces. Looks like now he's going to go ahead and tear it down. He does have a burrowed Droleth over here. This is commonly referred to as the Shambler strategy, although in this time around, Neblime's doing it over the 9 o'clock base, which is actually going to be one of the early bases the Protoss can take. Here's the Drakodon, the new Dragoon. You can see it actually has different facing angles, so it's a little bit unlike the Dragoon from Starcraft 1. 2 Legionnaires making their way across the map for scouting. We actually did see a little bit of a move out earlier on the minimap, but it looks like Hamster recalled his forces a little bit. That's why his Zealots are still on that round. Now, I'm not sure what Neblime is thinking for up next, but he is taking 3 o'clock on the map. That is going to mean that he's got his natural coming online. The Embassy is a great choice for Hamster since he does want to have access to additional workers. However, as you can see here, he's gone for the Witness instead. His Legionnaires are being zoned away. You don't want to lose them for free if you don't have to, so these 12 Quasilisks are going to get a little bit of value there. The other ones are just sort of burrowed in various locations or looking around in different locations. Cosmonarchy doesn't have upgrades, researches, anything like that. Burrow is available by default. The Maverick Stim Pack, the Maverick being the Marine equivalent, is also available by default. So anything that would be an ability or an upgrade or something that would be locked behind some sort of research that you'd have to get later on in the game, that doesn't exist in Cosmonarchy. Instead, you can add new units that maybe have specialized abilities or aura effects that can then unlock more capabilities for the rest of your composition. And that's kind of the upgrade, right, is getting up to a higher tier of tech. Hamster is going to go ahead and clear out the burrowed spy. Again, you can stand on units that are burrowed in order to reveal them. Not sure how he knew, but I think it's common practice for Zerg players to burrow like a Zethrakor or something like that around this area. And just try to frustrate your attempts at expanding. When you build over a burrowed unit, they're just forced to unburrow, but it still like confirms the scout for it and all that. So Neblime should be aware that his opponent is taking a Nexus. He's already got the top left up, so actually in terms of expo timing, Hamster's a little bit ahead of his opponent. The Witness is going to come in and take a look at what's going on, and the Stargate is just about to finish up over in the main. Just like the Gateway, the Stargate offers you 5 different units that you can choose, so we now have a combined total of 10 units that Hamster can make a composition out of. We'll see which ones he ends up electing to make, because so far he's made 3 out of the Gateway, and his Stargate is idle as he spends his initial round of money on a second one. So there is a point of vulnerability here where if Neblime was to go for a Den a little bit earlier, and this was already done instead of only now coming online, he could potentially go for a Hydra Flood and just sort of throw that across the map and wash across Hamster's shores. But it looks like the Stargates will be able to be provided here. You could maybe make a Panoptus, which is the Scout equivalent from StarCraft 1. They're actually very, very useful now. And look at that. Because the Stargate was scouted, he ends up canceling that one, and it looks like Hamster will fancy a different plan. So whatever he wanted to do there, he's hoping that Neblime overreacts to whatever his choice is, and, you know, then he's able to move away from that. So he does have an envoy. Transports can be pretty efficient over here. The Witness is indeed revealed by the Ovaleth. Technically, the Witness does have combat cloak internally, but again, it doesn't have a weapon. There's no way for it to actually do combat, so yeah, you're not going to be able to have it decloak automatically. You do need the detection for it. And if a keen eye can still see the translucency there, so Neblime was able to see it lurking around there. Thanks to his Ovaleth, he was able to actually reveal it so that his Quasilisks could kill it. We have one Gladius out. They have a very unique passive where they will attack a unit. That unit will sort of have a channel associated with the attack, and then their projectile will then bounce to a nearby target, and it will continue on as a chain. And you can imagine that one attack, maybe it's not so bad, but multiple attacks? Okay, now we're talking. And if you have, you know, a very, very high number of Gladiuses, that can certainly make a difference. 5 Zealots in this Envoy, a very powerful drop option. But it looks like for now, Hamster is just going to be contending with burrowed workers. See if, since there's no Witness with this army, it is going to take a lot of micro in order to actually kill this. We'll also see whether this Envoy is going to stick around to scoop up these Zealots. It looks like that's exactly what Hamster is thinking. There are some anti-air over here with the Hydras and Quasis. They're all both able to attack up. And now the Envoy is just going to chill out over here, holding out hope that he can get some more action done. Hamster's trying to find a safe spot. Kind of similar to Starcraft 2 safe spots, actually. But no, look at this. He's going to go ahead and make the unload happen right in the face of the Hydra and see if he can do something, right? Now, Hydralisks are actually a lot better versus Zealots than your Brood War instincts might tell you, because there are no damage types in Cosmonarchy. Instead, we have armor and armor pen, and that's about it. And that means that Hydras, with their 3 armor penetration, can ignore the armor of the Zealot, whereas Quasilisks struggle a lot more. The Circuith is also pretty good for high damage, so in that situation, you're going to be in a solid spot to attack it or riposte the Zealots. We don't have any other action going on the map currently, although during this cleanup, we do obviously have the Envoy moving through the rest of the map and just seeing what else it can find. You know, it's going to reveal multiple Spraiths over here by the Natural, and this pocket base on the top right is going to be held without really too many casualties. There were a couple of workers that were killed, so it wasn't ideal for the Zerg player, but it does mean that, you know, now he's going to maybe think about building workers, and then maybe the response from Hamster can be to just attack across the map. Now, there's some anti-air defenses happening, and the rallies from the gateways have been reset to defend the Natural and the back base, as well as, of course, the main base, because the rest of the army has moved across here for our Protoss player. He's including Exemplars in his composition. Exemplars, by the way, many of his units are also hovering on top of this Quasilisk, so that's no good, because now Neblime is definitely aware that that attack force is en route. But that goes to show you the map control that you can get. And yeah, there's a lot to talk about because another powerful tech structure just dropped. You can see here the utility of bringing the Exemplars and the Drakidins here to try to take shots at the circuits on the high ground. When you're on high ground, you get bonus range aiming down, and that is obviously very, very good. But at the same time, you know, Hamster has put his opponent in a bit of a rough spot because the Skither Cores, they do pretty well versus stacked light air, but armored air, not so much. Now, he does take out the Gladius, and the Exemplars can only attack ground, and they do attack pretty well as well. You know, he could maybe kill that Spraith if he's serious about it. He's having some army control issues a little bit here. Remember, it is still Brood War under the hood, despite all of the enhancements that we have made. So you need to spend a good amount of your focus on your army, and that's why Hamster is actually floating a bit of money now. But the Ancestral Archives is coming up, and that is a great choice for our Protoss player, because if you're fearing that your opponent is going to turtle up, as he currently is, with a large number of units that will suffer versus Splash, you can make any option out of the Ancestral Archives. You get Optectons, which are kind of like siege striders. Imagine like a more siege-oriented Drakidin, something like that. Then there's also the Archon, which is, you know, what you would expect. It's very powerful. It deals some splash damage in short range, not quite melee, but short range. Moves fast, has a lot of shields. And that's actually going to be the choice out of the first Ancestral Archives. The second one has been put down. They're very expensive structures. They're Tier 4 classified. And Crucible is going to come down here to supercharge those structures, increasing the rate at which they train units, which really helps versus things like, you know, when you're making these Archons and other such units that are very potent. Unlike the other production structures that we've seen Hamster make, the Ancestral Archives can only give you 3 units. I mentioned the Archon and the Optecton. The third one is the Patriarch. It's a supportive unit that also deals splash damage. It's pretty good versus stacks of air units because the Optecton its AoE damage is only really useful versus ground. You can't target air with it. And there's actually not that much here for Hamster to repost the stack of Skither cores, so we want to keep an eye out on where those end up going. However, I do think that the Exemplar count, particularly with their positioning, and the Dracodons here taking pot shots from a high ground, it's pretty good for Hamster's position here to kind of short-circuit this attack from Neblime. But Neblime isn't in too much of a worrisome situation because he still does have a lot of production, and his Tier 2 structure, the Iral Iris, just finished. You can see him immediately going for some evolved Kafralosks here. That's going to be the evolution of the Hatcherosk. He's also evolving a lot of his other tech. Matraval Nest is on the way. That's the main thing that Neblime really likes, but he likes to pair it with the Alkag-Eteth, which is the structure that I clicked on earlier, right over here. A lot of tech in Cosmonarchy because each race has on average something like 45 to 50 units. Patriarchs are on the field now. That support unit is going to eventually make it in. It looks like the Skither cores were relegated to defensive duty, but they're not completely useless because despite them being a very high gas cost relative to the early game, when you evolve the structure that they came from, they can actually turn into Vithralisks or Devourers for the StarCraft 1 audience. And the Vithralisk is really effective at reducing the armor of heavy air stacks. And also, if they attack an air unit that's on top of a ground unit, the stack will spread to those ground units. So you can even run the armor of ground situationally. Witness continuing to spy on Neblime's operation in the bottom right. That gas-heavy base is definitely going to allow Neblime to supercharge his tech, and I don't know that Hamster wants to facilitate that. Adding a lot of defensive structures and has a gateway for as part of the wall, as well as general production, of course. Grand Libraries have arrived. Those also offer a heavy amount of units for you to train should you want to. There's actually only 4 from the Grand Library relative to the Gateway, but they are pretty powerful units. Right now it's going to be the Cantavis, the High Templar, spellcaster galore. Zethrakor doesn't have the vision to actually see that army move out just yet. Archons move pretty fast in Cosmonarchy, so you do want to put them in the front of the line, but they can also reposition fairly quick. No siege options here does mean that he's kind of going to be relegated to putting his Exemplar in harm's way in order to bust these circuits, and they move very slowly and can't defend themselves versus air. However, the Skither cores and Almaxilisks have been dispatched to the top left. We're going to enter into a pseudo, not really base trade situation, but just multiple backstab attacks here, and Neblime is going to have to focus most of his attention on trying to hold. But his units are still pretty far away from Hamster's base. They're only going to be arriving in about 5-7 seconds. And that means that Hamster has a lot of time to focus on completely annihilating everything that Neblime has on the front. Now here come those Skither cores. They have depowered a lot of the units. Cantavises are here to throw down Psionic Storm. That's going to force these units to try their best to move out of the way. Another Storm would be great over here. The Crucible also provides power as a sort of advanced pylon, so destroying that pylon there wasn't as good of a snipe as maybe Neblime wanted. He's going to focus down the Uptecton, which is the siege weapon, but it's not so good versus air, so it might have been a bit of an awkward target there. At the same time, back at home, Neblime's forces have fallen yet again. The second line of defense has failed. He is going to have to try to amass his new rallied units over here on his ramp, but Hamster's looking to bust. He's actually focusing more on that, and he has held back at home. He can repower most of his production with just 1 or 2 pylons and get back into the swing of things if he even needs to. As of right now, I do think that Hamster is knocking on the door of victory, but well, there you go. I was going to say maybe there's some play there, but Neblime didn't want to wait for his next round of production. It was a little bit hopeless since he only had Bactylisks and Quasilisks in production. Those units are not good versus high armor targets, and that's basically what was left over after the initial attacks happened. So, Hamster taking another victory, and we have time for the last game in this set to decide, is Neblime going to be able to get another win on the board across the set, or is Hamster going to run away with it 4-1? We go to Sideshow, a map by yours truly, for our final game of this set. Neblime's yellow Zerg in the top left, and Hamster's green-blue something Protoss in the bottom right. We actually have over 100 player colors in Cosmonarchy, and you can hold Shift to see the exact color name, and it is indeed Midnight Green. So yeah, while hovering over these tooltips, you can get like good information by holding Shift. Actually, if you select a ranged unit, you can even get a range preview live in the game by holding Shift over the weapon ID, but the weapon icon. Of course, there are no ranged units yet because we only have workers, but that will change soon enough. I hope you guys are enjoying this more laid-back, by-the-numbers, educational cast for Cosmonarchy. Maybe it taught you a thing or two, even if you've been around for a little bit. And obviously for the veterans out there, you just have to follow along with me and think, yeah, that's exactly what I would say to a newcomer. In fact, if you've got suggestions for bringing newcomers into the fold in terms of education, I'd be all ears. We actually had Art of Turtle, a longtime Brood War head, suggest that we maybe, or no, it was, well, he suggested a few things, but Akko, a relative newcomer, suggested that maybe we could have some kind of strategy guide for, specifically what to do when you encounter a certain strategy. The meta isn't super well defined just yet. In fact, like I mentioned, the game that opened this whole cast up with Hamster getting a pretty sizable dub using his teleporter strategy where he had the Legionnaire Kabbalist composition, that's totally new. So that's not at all something that you would necessarily expect to happen. And so that's just one example of like the build that probably exists. It's probably a build that you can do there, but that kind of strategy is not necessarily something that we've seen prior to maybe a couple of days ago. Hamster has scouted that his opponent has gone Hatch Natural, which is a little bit more vulnerable than Hatch Ramp, and then has gone for a pool. He is going to tragically lose his scouting worker, but he is going to respond by, after his gateway, putting down a Nexus immediately. This is going to keep plenty of tempo for the Protoss in this engagement, and because the pool isn't done, but his scout was seen, he's now going to have to think about putting down some static defense, because if he doesn't, and there's a unit rallied across the map from the word go, instead of waiting for 400 minerals for that Nexus, well, there could be 2-3 Legionnaires in the base coming pretty soon. You do need to respect that. Only after you get your Quasilisks out and your circuits started can you really go back to making workers, or as we call it, drolling up, because we have Droleths instead of drones. But you can call it whatever you want. We do have 4 Quasilisks and 2 Zethrakors. They're going to head down across the map using this relatively new path that's been added to this map in recent history. Looks like the Quasis are going to safeguard the middle for now, while the Zeths just peer on over. Wouldn't mind taking that 3 o'clock location with the Zeths just to see what's going on. In fact, one of those Zeths will maybe pursue this Scribe. That was actually a rescout, which we don't mind here. Oh no, and I think based on the SimCity position, the Legionnaire has been stuck. Now, it's not the end of the world, because you can actually just make another Legionnaire and like attack the pylon or something. Or indeed, if this Quasilisk comes up, well, never mind, it's out of range now. But I was going to say, you could get your Legionnaire up by attacking a target with the Legionnaire and then having it teleport, right? Scribe is going to be killed by that... He's trying. Oh, there we go. We're going to see it. Yeah. Hey, there you go. He did a little bit of hull damage, but you know what? He saved himself. So the rally points dictate where the units come out from, and Legionnaires obviously have the ability to get out like that, which is pretty funny to me. Hamster's showcased a strategy that you can go back and if you see the first game in the set, first couple matches in the set, Hamster did a move where he put the pylon on the low ground, or the high ground rather, and one Legionnaire, and cliff jumped up of it in order to sort of elevator his units into his into his enemy's base. That kind of thing you can do, and that's the neat little interactions that you have. Hatch at the ramp, Hydrith Den 75% complete. And that means that with a relatively small number of actual units, although I do like these Quasilisks ready to backstab if any gateway units move out across the map and there's not that many elsewhere. I do like that. It's definitely an option. But yes, the Quasilisks are here just to hold the ramp. And with a relatively small number of military units made, Neblime's able to take a worker advantage. The embassy is on the way. And the Quasilisks can jump into this Ovaleth here. You can fit up to 6 of them in there. Wouldn't surprise me if 3 of them go in here and try to kill some workers. We have Dracodins galore, Embassy for a Witness, and we have a Lattice making Vassals. So the Lattice is another structure that gives you 5 unique units that you can make. The Lattice affords you mostly some splash damage tools for early in the game. So if you want to remain on a lower tech option, this is a tier 1 structure. Again, if you contrast that with what happened on Infinite Velocity, where Hamster went for an Ancestral Archives, a tier 4 structure, that's a very different situation to be put in. And with the idols that you can make out of the Lattice, I'll talk a little bit more about them if we see them. They deal splash damage. There's another unit in there that deals splash damage in melee versus ground only. And the Dracodins are going to try to scramble to see if they can kill this Ovaleth, but some of the idle unit positioning is actually hurting Hamster here. Now, when his Witness finishes, or I guess it already has finished because it's halfway across the map right now as we speak. Looks like maybe... Yeah, look at this. Okay, we've got We've got Hamster looking around for any additional victims to see. Maybe his witness spotted some of those units. Not 100% sure. Doesn't seem like it. He's going to put the Nexus down for the third. Okay, so he's just doing eco. He's just securing his... I thought maybe he was planning an attack of some kind, but his witness will confirm that there's... whether or not there's actually an opportunity for that as he hovers near our sponsor billboard. Vassals scouting around. I like the Vassals. They're not very good DPS. Now here come the Quasis trying to leap upon this opportunity to kill the Scribe, but that's not going to happen with the Dracodons so close by. And that will make the whole rest of the map go rather dark for our Zerg player as he attempts to get his hatch down. If these Vassals were in a better spot, they could have actually killed the worker. They're much better versus unarmored targets. Sharking around just to see if they can get any harassment done, but it's not going to happen with these Vassals. He does reveal, of course, that there are Hydras. The witness may have already seen that. This Droleth is here purposefully. Neblime is going to go ahead and try to put a hatch in front of this ramp and see if he can secure it, and he'll eventually spread a hatch over here as well to secure the double ramp side. That way he will have up his 3 bases up pretty well, and he'll have the pick of the litter if he wants to take 9 o'clock or 12. Our Protoss player may already be thinking about doing things. You might see a Hydra pick up and drop it over there. That could be pretty neat. A Warden on the high ground is going to help deal with this. 2 workers are killed as they navigate between the natural and the third. This attack force, not really much of an attack force, actually more of a scouting squad. The Legionnaire might be able to... oh, not quite. Not able to keep up with the speed of the Hydra. I was going to say maybe he could make a little bit of a beeline there. And there's an idol. I was talking about these guys with their splash damage. Not going to be as useful versus the Hydra units because... there are plenty of units that have enough potency, enough HP to deal with the splash, but if it was going to be a stack of air units, or it's going to be a stack of, say, like Zethricore or some of those tightly packed units, that would have been an option there. Some good eco damage here to kill the Scribe count, make it a little bit more managed. My only problem with that is that he's using Hydralisks, which obviously cost Vespian. Some units have been just rallied over here, some more Hydras returning to the back line. Back home to defend this Hacharosk. Vassals, again, are never going to kill a Hacharosk with such a low number, so pretty good there. But it does seem like Hamster is, he's finna move out. He's thinking about it. He's feeling the move out in this situation. He's got double Ardent Authority. This bad boy is a structure that also gives you 5 unique units, one of which being the Architect, the premier siege weapon that you have access to. Second one is on the way. Servitors are more like a rank and file type of unit. When they die, they release a pulse that speeds up the rest of your army for a short time, movement speed-wise, so can absolutely be efficient and useful. Now here is a sort of an anti-timing in favor of Hamster. Neblime was just now setting up his defenses, and also had a round of workers just made. So before any of the defenses are able to be finished, Hamster walks up there, and his siege weapon is in place now, so he can decide to pull the trigger a little bit faster. At the same time, Tier 2 has just started, so again, a lot of resources just got expended into that tech structure. Neblime will be a little bit fragile for a little bit of time. Hamster can, at minimum, get an advantage in this situation and maybe expand up to a 4th base. The Architect is doing its best to disseminate punishment, to design something in favor of the Protoss here. But we do have many circuits coming online, even a Spraith here as well, and when there's an Ovaleth over here to clear out that Witness, it'll be a lot easier for... Neblime to hold out against Hamster's situation here. I'm wondering where that second Architect is. It looks like maybe it's still back at home. Yep, Hamster has figured it out now. Adding some static defense to his third. Avaleth over here to scout, but it looks like it will just get bopped by the static defense and the Dracodons over there. I wouldn't mind if Hamster was going to try to posture around taking the middle of the map, but it does feel like it's a little bit awkward to try to siege this base now. There's the Avaleth to reveal the Witness I was mentioning. Not able to actually get the kill. Cycling back now, went back through the middle of the map, and Neblime taking the wider bridges. Not really an option for him to attack up towards this third base with the forces already here, but if they're ever caught out of position, could be big. And indeed, 6 o'clock will be taken. It looks like Neblime thinking about 9, and actually he's going to deny 6 o'clock with his army. We'll see what Hamster does in return, as 2 Architects are about to finish. What's the reaction here? That Nexus does have to get canceled because Hydras will penetrate the armor. The Scribe does live, so he can send that back at any time. If he even wants to clear it. Again, remember, the cliff advantage is very, very important here. The +2 weapon range targeting your enemies on the low ground can equalize ranges or maybe make it more in your favor, depending on who has the higher base range. But as of right now, looks like Hamster is going to go ahead and fix his poor SimCity with the gateways in the wrong spot there, but he's trying to get rid of his mineral float, which isn't a bad idea. Architects are coming on out quite fast, actually. And 9 o'clock will be erected for Neblime. So our Zerg player does find himself in an economic advantage. Not necessarily in terms of worker count, which has got good parity, although he does have 15 more workers queued up, so he will soon have the lead. But in terms of access to more Vespene in particular, and also more efficient mineral income, he's definitely going to be in a pretty good spot. And maybe he'll even look to take 12 o'clock soon as well. You may have already noticed, but the 12 and 6 bases are very easily harassable through high-range units to attack the mineral fields. But the gases are safe and sound down here at the map border. Witness is going to confirm that there's no such thing as a 12 o'clock base for Neblime, but it will also bypass the anti-surface defenses over here, and as a result of seeing that, may dissuade this attack from going in just as an A move. Zets are going to move around over here and intercept the Architect, Golem, Drakodin composition that we see here. There's one Servitor, which, honestly, if the Servitor front loads in, it might be used just to bring the rest of the army up, because remember, it does release that movement speed pulse. There it is. But it doesn't look like Hamster's interested in using it for that purpose. He didn't use it to retreat or to attack. And the Scortrits are proving quite powerful. These are advanced defenses. Hey, the Avaloth just bit the dust, though, thanks to the Architect missile splitting. If they travel a certain minimum range, they'll split to attack 2 additional targets. And you can see the Architects are taking some damage, but so far it's working out for him. The clock is ticking. There's not really that many military units started here for Neblime. He's only making a couple of Bactylisks, which are not really going to help him versus the Architects. The Mutat Spy are halfway done, but I think maybe with 5 Architects over here, we needed to see a more immediate reaction. Maybe Tetzoricors, which he did have one of, but needed way more of. It looks like the 3rd base will be in jeopardy pretty soon. Now, he's done a great job of thinning the herd of the Drakodin count. We only have the 5 Architects in the back, and they're pretty helpless versus, you know, being surrounded. Remember, their DPS does get significantly reduced if you get into melee range with them, since they can't benefit from their high-range stuff, which is maybe what the Aziricors are for, being thought of. But he's going to probably have to sack this base. He's going to go ahead and pull the workers, see if he can occupy the Architects. They are going to come back in. There's a 6th one has just arrived. Remember, there's Hydras and Aziricors, but now they're all safe. Here's the drill. Going to go ahead and see what he can do. Neblime in a bit of a desperate situation, trying to kill the Architect. Is going to make it happen. Okay, he managed to kill one of them. One was all he had. A Zeth Flood, Quasis, Hydras. Quite a smorgasbord, but the horde of Zealots coming in from all of those gateways is more than enough to make Neblime believe there is no hope. And look at that. Neblime thought he had everything covered, but he thought wrong because the Architects were more than capable of smashing through the Scortriths, those advanced anti-surface defenses. And look at that. Hamster has managed to score 4-1 in a 5-game set against Neblime. We'd love to see that kind of improvement out of our boy, since Hamster originally was a Zerg player. Neblime originally was a Terran player. Both of them switching races. Neblime's been playing for longer than Hamster has. But for Hamster to come out swinging as Protoss, Neblime's got some thinking to do. And I hope you guys have appreciated this look at Cosmonarchy. We'll be back tomorrow with even more content, so stay tuned, and we'll see you then.